So let's get started with 3.3a, and we're going to start on page 231 with the slope-intercept form. Now, if you remember, a couple sections before, we had written equations with the y first, and then we put something like that, and then we plug a number in for x and see what y it spit out. So if we put a 0 in for x, we got a 0 for a y, a 2 in for x, we got a 4 for a y, a negative 2 in for x, a negative 4. So then we'd end up graphing it, and we'd get something like that. And it always went through the origin. And then we talked about what would happen if we added a number to it. That it would shift it up 1, 2, 3 units. Or if this were a minus 3, it would shift it down 1, 2, 3 units. So what happened is this number right here tells me where this line is going to cross the y-axis. So when this is a negative 3, it's going to cross at negative 3. When it's a positive 3, it's going to cross it at positive 3. When it doesn't exist, it's going to cross at 0 because it's like having a 0 there. So there is a form that I have here, and it's called the slope-intercept form. And it's called the slope-intercept form because when it's written this way, when the exponent on the y is just a 1 and the exponent on the x is just a 1, when it's written in this way, with the I first, or the y first, a number in front of the x, sometimes that number is just a 1. So there's actually a 1 there. So a number in front of the x and plus or minus another number. This is called slope-intercept form. Because what happens is this first number tells me the slope of every line. This number tells me where the line crosses the y-intercept. So it's slope-intercept form. And it's actually written like this. Remember, I used m to represent the slope. And then the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, we use the letter b. So that is the slope-intercept form. And once a line, or once an equation is put into that form, you can graph the line really quick and easy. So let's look and see what we can do with this. Example 1, it gives me the slope, get my pen out, of negative 4/3, and it gives me the y-intercept of 5, and they're asking me to write the equation. Well, y equals mx plus b is the equation. 4/3 represents m. Y-intercept is 5, which is the number that goes there. And I just wrote the equation. So if I had that equation, and if I wanted to graph that equation, it's really easy to do. Remember in earlier stuff, what we did if we wanted to graph an equation is we would put some numbers in for x and see what number we got for y, and put numbers in here, and then we graph it. Okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We still want to use that sometimes, but that's not the fastest way to do it. Fastest way to do it is to put it in this form. My y-intercept, or where it crosses the y-axis, is at 5. Then if you remember, this is the slope, and the slope is always the change in y over the change in x. So if this is y and this is x, from where it crosses the y-axis, we go down 4, because negative 4, and this is y, so we go down 4, and then over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that point right there is where we are going to put our dot. Then we get the line, and because it's going downhill, it is a negative. So that's all there is to that. We can look at just this equation and find out where it crosses and what the slope is, and we just do y, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, x is 3, 1, 2, 3, gives us a second point. We can connect the dots. That's it for example 1. So example 2 gives us an equation. And they want you to tell me what the slope and the y-intercept are. Now, first of all, before we do that, we have to put it in this form. So we're going to set it equal to y. So we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. That gets rid of that. So we get -3y equals, and we'll put the -2x first, so it's in the correct order, like it is here. The x is first there. Then we're going to divide by -3, and then divide this whole thing by -3. Now, so if you remember, when you divide the whole thing by -3, it's actually each term divided by -3. Let me write that different. I'm going to put a plus 5 over -3 here like that. So, oops, there's a negative there. Y equals 2/3 x plus -5/3, or we can just erase the plus sign and have it -5/3. So where does it cross the y-axis? Well, let's leave this as this, and that makes it easier. It crosses the y-axis at -5/3, which means you're going to have to change this to a mixed number, because it's kind of hard to graph -5/3, but it's a lot easier to show the point 1 2/3 because it's somewhere around there. And then we look at our slope. It's positive, so I know it's going to go this way. And I also know it's going to, whoops, come on. I also know that it's going to go through that point, -1 2/3. Let me put that back on there. So 2/3 is my slope. That means my y is on top, and then there's my x. So it says that my y I'm going to go up to, which is kind of like guessing, because you're going to go up to from 1 2/3. So 1, 2, so somewhere around in here. And then I'm going to go over left 3. So I'm going to be about right there, and it's going uphill because it's positive. I'm sorry, my line is not very pretty. It goes uphill, and that's what my graph looks like. So even though the instructions just asked what the slope was, and what the y-intercept was, I went ahead and showed you what the graph would look like. So given example 3, it's asking us to graph the linear function. And all the linear function is an equation that will give you a straight line. So here we go. We've got y equals -2/3 x plus 2. So they want us to graph it. Really simple because it's already in slope-intercept form. 2 is our y-intercept. -2/3 is our slope. And that's like y over x. So from this point right here, we go down 2 because it says negative, and over 3. And then we draw our line, and it's going downhill because it's negative. Okay, something else I want to have you look at too. What if I wanted to do this a little bit differently, and instead of going down 2 over 3, what if I had 2 over negative 3? Remember I said that these two are the exact same? And let me show you what happens here. So this says I go up 2 from this point. Up 2 and over how many? 1, 2, 3 in the negative direction, giving you this point here. So let me put that on the graph. Notice it still gives me the exact same line. It still gives me a line that goes through this point and this point, but it also gives me another point up here. So this is the same line. So it doesn't matter what you do. If this is a negative 2 over a positive 3 or a positive 2 over a negative 3, when you graph, you will get the same line. So one is not correct and one is, one is wrong and one is right. They're both the same. So I'm going to put our definition of slope. Remember I said we've got y1 minus y over x1 minus x. Sometimes you're not going to want it in this form. Sometimes you're going to want it in another form. And so the other form is if you were to multiply to get rid of the fraction, so to get rid of that denominator, and you multiply both sides by that, you get x1 minus x times m equals y1 minus y. And you get that there. That is called the point slope form. And the reason that we call it the point slope form is sometimes you're not given the same information as you are on other problems. So for instance, if they gave you, like example 4, they're asking you to find the equation of a line that has a slope of negative 2, and it also has a point on that line at negative 4, 3. So they didn't give you 2 points. They didn't give you an equation. They didn't give you the y-intercept and a slope. They gave you a slope and 1 point. That's all the information they gave you. So let's say that we just want to graph it. We know the point negative 4, 3. That's all they've given us, so we at least know that we have a point right there. We also know that we have a slope right there, and that slope can also be written as negative 2 over 1, where 2 is the y and x is the 1. So from this point that they gave us right here, we can go down 2 and over 1, and that gives us this point here, and we have this right there, okay? And we know that from left to right, it goes downhill. They gave us a negative slope. So yeah, there is our graph there. So, but what they want us to do is they want us to find the equation of the line. So given that information right here, this is all the information they gave us, we can find the equation of a line. So we can decide whether or not we want this negative 4, 3, what we want it to represent. So we can either have it be the x1, y1, or the xy, because if you remember, we have 2 different x's here, like we do here, and 2 different y's here and here. So it doesn't really matter which one you use. So let's go ahead and make this first one equal to our point. they gave us. So the x1 is -4 and the y is 3. So let's look at this equation and plug in the information that we know. So if that's the case, I'm going to move this all up a little bit, make it a little smaller. And in red, instead of an x1, we're going to put a -4, this one right here, because that's in the x position, minus x, times m, and our m is -2, equals our y1, which is going to be 3, because we're putting 3 in for that, minus y. So I'm going to turn some things around. I'm going to switch these around. -2 times -4 minus x, so that I have just one number there in front. Just nothing wrong with the way I did it before, but it's easier to distribute. So -2 times -4 is 8. -2 times -x is plus x, or 2x, equals 3 minus y. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep going and write this equation in slope-intercept form. So let me rewrite this again because you can see the 2x better. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So 8 minus 3 plus 2x equals -y. 5 plus 2x equals -y. Now I don't want the -y, that needs to be a positive. So once I get my y isolated, written like this, I can change absolutely everything to its opposite, and that gives me a positive y. Now let's flip this around. Let's put the y over here instead, just so it's on the left. And to get it in the y equals mx plus b format, my x has to be first, so I'm going to take the negative sign with it, like that. So now it's in the correct format. So it said find the equation of the line, write the answer in slope-intercept form, which is what I did. And so let's go ahead and practice just one time here. Again, just practice graphing this. So it crosses at -5. So there's where my line crosses. And my slope is -2 over 1. And remember that equals y over x. So from this point, I'm going to go down 2 more, because it's negative, and then over 1. So there's my line, and I know that at least I'm going in a negative direction. From left to right, I'm going downhill, and my slope right here is negative, so that works for that. So that is what we've got there. I'm going to make a real short second video just to do example 5 and 6, and then we'll be done.